Welcome, everyone. My name is Dominic. I am the founder of Chromatic and the company behind Storybook. I'm really looking forward today to talk to you about everything that's going on in Storybook and Cursor. Um, Here to join me is Kevin Lenaway. We're going to start with a quick presentation, and then we'll jump straight into the demo. Um, don't hesitate to leave questions in the Q&A system. Leave comments in chat. We love that. We're Kyle, my colleague here, is going to monitor the chat, surface the most interesting comments and questions, and we'll just drop them during the demo and throughout uh, throughout the deck as well. So yeah, just really excited to be here, and then I'll kick us off with a couple of slides to kind of paint the picture. Share my screen. So I think we're all here today because speed actually matters. And AI's whole value proposition is to shorten the time between idea and action. In app development, uh, in the race for app development, there are kind of three ways you can approach it. You can ship fast, you can ship smart, or you can cut corners. And since 90% of ideas typically get discarded anyways, it's a hell of a lot easier just to ship fast. There are really two paths to speed up coding in this AI world. On one hand, you have AI assisted coding, and on the other hand, you have vibe coding. Now, uh, with AI assisted coding, you have tools like VS Code and the Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, Codex, Claude Code, you name it, right? On the other hand, with vibe coding, you have tools like Lovable and Volt, Replit, V0. These are all brands you've probably heard of, tools that you've probably wanted to use or have used in the past. Today, we're really here to talk about AI assisted coding, though. So even though AI is writing your code, it's still like our discipline is still software engineering, and that is a professional discipline that has concerns like maintenance and quality and performance, security, total cost of ownership. So for the 10% of apps that do succeed, that an early foundation of solid code with software engineering principles really helps the winners reach their next milestone. So again, hey everyone, I'm Dominic. I'm the founder of Chromatic, the company behind Storybook. And we're here today to really talk about prototyping and at the production level with Cursor and Storybook. Kevin Lenaway is joining me. He's the principal software AI engineer. He's waving right now at Pioneer Square Labs. It's a venture studio that's in the business of building software fast. So Kevin, do you want to say a couple things?
Yeah, so first of all, thrilled to be here. I've been a Storybook fan for a very long time prior to AI being a thing. Um, yeah, so as part of my job, we work with entrepreneurs to validate a bunch of ideas. So spinning up prototypes is a big part of what we do. We always want to test it out with users first. And then once something kind of catches with our users, then we go ahead and start to build it into a real startup. And so, yes, there's this balance of we want to get something out there as quickly as possible because most of what we put out there, people don't care about. But there's this sort of chicken and egg thing where the ones that people do care about actually are really important to us and we need to build even faster. And so if we start on a foundation that's very shaky and can't be improved on, we end up wasting valuable time kind of replatforming and rebuilding it later in the future. So I'm trying to find this balance between sort of production level-ish code and also very quickly getting a prototype. And that's kind of what I want to talk through today.
And yeah, you've spun off a couple businesses from Pioneer Square Labs that have been very successful.
Yeah, so I've been here probably 8 years now. You know, worked on probably 50 ideas, most of which failed, but we had I've worked on about six that have become venture funded companies, including a company called Recurrent, which is in the battery health company or battery health space that raised about 20 million. And a company called Single File, which is all about using AI for compliance, also raised about 24 million over the past few years. Had a few acquisitions along the way and things like that. But yeah, really, really fun job. I have to say, really fun job.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Kevin. Yeah, suffice to say, you know what you're talking about when it comes to building things quickly. And speaking of building things quickly, like, what do we know about AI? Like, AI has a lot of hype around it, mostly pertaining to the fact that it's fast. It's a hell of a lot harder to task like my meat brain, like my brain on something versus like having a machine do it for me. But the problem is you kind of have no idea if the code renders or if the user flows work when you use AI, especially when it comes to software development and in the domain of front end. So let's take a look at the agentic workflow for front end development. So LLMs generate JavaScript code, which is then built to render in your browser. Your front end tests run in your browser, and then that output is often pasted back to the LLM model to iterate. Now you can manually paste it, or you can pipe it back into an LLM. It's kind of up to you. Uh, uh, so the LLMs are really fast at the first two steps, but the kind of thing that we need to call attention to is the fact that we are front end developers. And all the code that we write is intermediated by a thing called the web browser. It's been around for decades, and it's part and parcel. Understand the nuances of the web browser is part of our job. Um, so that means that you can't apply the same LLM workflow that you use for backend or use for any other part of the stack to front end because the source code isn't one to one with the rendered code in browser as your users experience it. That means like an IDE centric developer experience like Cursor, VS Code, Windsurf by themselves can't really satisfy all the jobs that front end developers need to do. Yeah, sure, you can review the generated source code, and I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with doing just that. But it's kind of tough to divine uh, uh, what the rendered code looks like from taking a look at like your React code. Um, and you end up having to build that source code to exercise every key state that the user can reach in order to actually verify it. So in a vanilla JavaScript app, like verifying these front end changes can actually take a long time, and this is this is pre AI and post AI, really, like because you have to spin up the entire stack and try to view every single kind of key state of your front end that you care about, like the entire checkout flow or the entire um, you know uh, buy flow. Um, and that's especially true. Like it's tough to verify, especially for the kind of the broader edge cases as your app kind of gets more complex. And Cursor recently released actually like some browser awareness, which is super exciting. And Kevin could probably speak to that and probably at the end of this talk. But when you think about it, it actually has a similar speed profile as end-to-end testing, right? You have to spin up your entire app, you have to run your database, you have to do all this stuff. Um, and all that stuff is actually pretty slow when it comes down to it. Yes, it's automated. AI can automate that, but the actual like physics of it are pretty slow. So that's kind of where Storybook uh, comes in. It's we already have a tool that can help you express every key state of your front end. And Storybook gives you a structured view of the generated components and its states that are compiled. It's not source code. Uh, and if that generated code fails to render, you can feed that back into the LLM. And in this way, like Storybook is kind of a nice pairing for an AI assisted coding workflow because it lets you visually verify that like, hey, the output of that LLM is like good enough, and you can continue moving on. So uh, I'm really excited for Kevin to come on the stage today because he has a really novel approach to using Cursor with Storybook, and I'm really thrilled that he's here today to break that down for us. Um, as a reminder for this demo, like we want you to ask questions, we want you to participate in the chat. Kyle and I will be dropping some of those questions that you ask directly to Kevin. So we can kind of steer the conversation as like the audience wants. And also a reminder, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session afterwards if we don't get to the things that you want us to explain or break down for you. So with that, I'm going to uh, stop sharing my screen, turn the mic over to Kevin, and Kevin's going to walk us through everything that he's seen.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So again, thanks for having me. Like I said, you know, been a huge fan of Storybook for a while. And for my demo today, I want to walk through kind of a typical workflow that we use sort of day to day at my day job at Pioneer Square Labs, which is we're going to come up with a startup idea. We're going to quickly prototype some of the key screens on there, and then just kind of show how we use Storybook and some of the other tools with Cursor to really rapidly start to get this in the hands of our product owners, our designers, and our users as quickly as possible so that we can iterate on this front end without having to go through all the hard work of building an entire app and only to find out, gosh, we're way off the mark with a handful of things. So that's what I'm going to walk through today. We're going to do some live coding here, and with any live coding, it works 50% of the time when you're by yourself and about 10% of the time when you're in front of hundreds of people. So that'll be fun for all of us. But let's give it a shot, and we will see what happens here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move a little quickly through these first steps here just to get this thing kicked off so that we're not just sitting here, vamping while our AI is working. But wanted to show an example here. So a couple of weeks ago, went through this process where we're trying to come up with some good startup ideas for another project I'm working on. And so we thought, all right, we want about 10 to 20 good startup ideas. In order to do that, let's create 150,000 ideas using AI, and then use this rubric approach to kind of narrow it down to the 20 absolute best ideas out of this whole search space of startup ideas that are out there. So we did. I threw all 20 of these in here, and we're going to pick a random one to build out today. It's truly random. I have not seen a lot of these. Okay, and one of the criteria we use for these ideas is we wanted these to be sort of quick side project type things. Okay, selfishly, it would be awesome to have a little startup that is generating, 5K a year or something, that's just doing one very, very specific niche thing. Doesn't take a lot of time to support it or keep it going. So that's kind of the vibe of these. So they're going to be very specific, and let's see what this one is. So yes, here we go. So this is a subcontractor invoice tool. So we're going to get some summaries and reports. We're going to dive in here, bunch of details. Okay, we won't worry too much about exactly what this is. Just know that this is sort of a niche app that does something very specific. Okay, so now what I normally do is I will go ahead and take this idea and I bring it to ChatGPT, and I have this prompt that I use to generate a task list of things for my AI agent to go and do in order to build out my prototype. Now I'm going to speed that up. Basically, I bake that prompt into this tool. So if I hit this button, it generates it. I pre-generated all 20 of these. So even though I haven't seen this, this is cached just to make this easier.
Hey, Kevin, really quickly, like, why do you want to generate a task list and like break everything into discrete steps like this?
Yes, good question. So the reason I'm doing this is because I want my agent to go off and do as much of this on its own as possible. Because if it's me kind of walking it through component by component or having to break this down, it just takes a lot of time, right? And so use AI to kind of speed up that the process of sort of thinking and planning. And actually, my day to day, I found myself spending probably at least half, if not more, of my time on the planning and upfront specking, as opposed to the writing of the code or the reviewing of the code. It's it used to be like 10% plan, 10% review, and 80% code. It's almost shifted to like
Wow.
coding actual coding, hands-on coding time is probably 10% or less these days. Very, very
And
heavily reliant on the AI for this.
do you find that planning and doing this like research upfront helps with the quality of the output?
100%. It's night and day difference. And when I see, I talk to a lot of developers and I hear wildly different opinions on AI. Some people saying it's amazing, I'm 10x faster. Some people saying, what are you talking about? This doesn't work at all for me and my code I'm doing. And I think when you actually dive in, the biggest difference is you really have to over specify and spend a lot of time up front versus just trying to like type a few sentences, see what comes out, and then be disappointed when it's not exactly what you want. So yeah,
So is this like the trick for making AIs like productive? It's like
I
just
think so.
invest all that time into planning and you'll get a much better result.
I have a giant bag of tricks to make AI better at a lot of things. This is my number one trick. If you have to do
Amazing.
one thing away from this, use this approach. And I've got some examples. I'll show you how to do this exactly. But yeah. All right. So let me do one thing real quick to kind of get this going. So another trick I have is, with AI, AI's got a bunch of code in its training set, and they have checkpoints. And oftentimes those checkpoints are kind of old. And oftentimes, they're really focused on popular frameworks, popular types of tools. And if you're using something that's not really in the training set, you're going to have a bad time. Okay. So again, that's another reason why I think there's a big discrepancy between these different developers. So what I've done is I've actually created this starter template that's full of very AI friendly types of tools. A storybook is one of them. You get storybooks set up out of the box. Dominic, cover your ears. It's a little bit of an older version of Storybook, so but that's on purpose. Well, it's partially because I'm lazy, but mostly on purpose because some of the newer stuff just isn't going to be in the training data, and you're going to be fighting your AI trying to get it to do the new stuff that it thinks it's doing it right, but as of September of 2024 or something. All right. So anyway, this is open source. A bunch of
Devin,
people.
just real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to interject there. Storybook team is actively working on fixing that exact problem,
Oh, interesting. I
like
love.
providing an MCP server to help your LLM know all the capabilities of your Storybook.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be such a key thing. And yeah, getting docs that are LLM friendly, you can one click get markdown, things like that. We're seeing a lot of that with tooling, so that's getting better and better. So yeah. All right. So what are we calling this again? Oh yeah, this is our subcontractor. Did I get it? Yeah. No. Close enough. Our demo. We'll just call this. I already have it. Oh, maybe I already have done this one. That's so funny. I've done a couple of these demos. Two. There we go. So we're going to create this. This is going to be public. This is open source. You guys can check this out later. But we're just going to generate this. And let's see here. Okay, we're going to clone this locally just to show there's no like smoke and mirrors here. I'm gonna build this, and you guys let me know if my screen is too small, you guys can't see. Please like raise your hand. Let me know if I can, get the Fisher Price version of my screen.
Yeah, maybe zoom in just preemptively.
Okay, yep, I will do
Yeah.
that. A little better. Close enough. We'll switch out to terminal here in a sec. Let me just do an install, get this going. And all right. So I'm about to open up a Cursor. So if you guys haven't used Cursor before, haven't heard of it, it's a fork of VS Code. It's really good for AI coding tasks. There's lots of different ways you can use it. It's got a nice tab model. It's got a bunch of other things here. But the way I really like to use it is the agent mode. This is sort of this autonomous approach where the agent's going to go off and do basically that whole task list thing. So, okay, I'm going to try to like see how this works.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, let me know. Okay, so one thing we need to do, let's go back and grab our task list. And again, I'll talk you guys through exactly how to generate this in a sec, but I just want to kick this guy off. Okay, so one thing that I like to do and is built into this this repo, and again, there's nothing special about this repo. There's a ton of different ways you can do this. So experiment, have fun. You can use this as a reference if you want to get started, but again, there's a million different ways to do this. But I basically just have a markdown file. And I kind of have in my repos lately this little agent helper folder. And basically, this is a space where I tell the AI agent, like, look, don't mess with my repo, but anything in this folder, this is for you. You can use it to keep track of what you're doing. I've got these instructions for the agent to kind of go through. I might post logs in here. I might have sample code. You've got a scratch pad. Go nuts. You can delete this thing if you want. I don't care. This is for you. And that tends to work pretty well. Okay.
Why is it helpful? So is it like adding context ahead of like the code generation that the LLM references? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like
Yeah.
the architecture and why?
Yes, I can. Let me do this. Let me kick this off just so it gets going because we're gonna have about 10 minutes to chat here.
Cool.
But I will get back to that in just one sec. But before I do so, here's my prompt that I use to kind of kick off my agent tasks. And you can read through this. Again, this is just like kind of using some best practices. It's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, a little bit of just like throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Okay, so don't feel like this is exactly what you have to do, but it's a good starting point, and this has actually worked for me quite well. But basically all it says is like, hey, you're a great developer. You've been assigned this task list. Go through it until you're done, okay? You can type this in if you want, but Cursor actually introduced this really nice new thing where you can put common prompts there and you can just use a slash command. So I'm going to just do that. Again, nothing special here. One thing is I'm using the new Claude 4.5 Sonnet, which is a nice model. It's also kind of fast. It's not quite as good as GPT-5, so we'll kick it off. We'll see how this works. Okay, so now this is going to work, and this will probably take 5 to 10 minutes to go through this whole task list and get things done. So now that I have a sec, let me go back and answer that question because it's super important, which is, why are we giving the agent all of this space to work? One of the biggest things that can improve and actually make the difference between a bunch of slop code that you throw away and a bunch of really good code that is 95% of the way there is managing your context, okay? So the way the AI model works is it has some amount of memory space, you can think of it of. Generally it's measured in tokens. A token's about a third of a word or something like that. But in general, you have the modern ones have 100,000 to 200,000 tokens. So you can think of it as about 100,000 words. Now, what you want to do is you want to be careful that if you don't have enough, if you're not using this context, the AI agent's not really going to know what to do. It's not going to know enough about your code base or about what you're trying to accomplish to actually do anything. And it's not going to tell you that. It's going to guess. And you really don't want it to guess, okay? You want it to go and actually do the thing that you want it to do, because once it starts guessing, it's all over. So it's really about keeping it on track. And by giving it this place to kind of, manage where it's at in the process, it really helps to keep it on track for much longer types of tasks. So for example, this scratchpad. What I do here is oftentimes I'll tell the agent, look, go off and start doing this, 20-minute task, but I want you to constantly be referencing this scratchpad and let me know what you're doing. And not only is it letting me know what it's doing, every time it comes back to write to it, it will read it and it'll remember kind of where it is. So it's just about keeping the real tasks in context. Otherwise, what'll happen is you say it at the beginning and it basically forgets. You run out of room. There's so much junk in there. It doesn't know what the important stuff is. And so you're constantly trying to keep whatever is important sort of top of mind for your AI agent.
So this scratchpad is like an ongoing list. Like it's effectively helping helping this agent that is a world-class developer get back on track after it kind of explores certain holes.
Yes, generally. Yep. And again, it's sort of you sort of hand this off to the agent and let it go and work. Because sometimes like a task like this is a fairly small task. We don't have a huge code base here. And so it doesn't have a ton of stuff in its context window, and it's going to probably do a pretty good job of just working through this within its working memory. And that's the one thing about these agents too, especially the modern ones. If you try to guide them too much, or just they're just gonna sort of fight against you, and you might misinterpret something, or you might have some conflicting instructions. Also, you just don't need to, right? Let the
Yeah.
agent just sort of go, see how far you can get by letting it go on its own. And if you need to kind of rein it in, you can kind of do that after the fact. But sort of do the lazy thing. Start with like just go and do it. And what's nice about an AI agent code is like it's not like an intern where they spend 2 weeks building something and you got a bunch of code and you're like, oh, this is really bad. It's going to take me a week to review all this. I'd rather just throw it away and do it from scratch. You don't feel bad about
Yeah,
that. Agent does a bad job. Bye. Try again. Right? That's fine.
totally, totally. A lot of the things that I've heard recently about agentic workflows has been around like this idea that you can start to treat them like a slot machine. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But Jerome here in the comments is like, is it more effective to look at where it went off the rails, improve the prompt accordingly, and restart the execution? So like redo it all, or like try to fix the thing that you're working on
Yeah.
now.
That's a great question. Generally, what I will try to do is I will try to, if something goes a little bit off the rails, I will try to, maybe once or twice to try to get it to course correct. If it doesn't do it after one or two times, it's never going to do it, and it's going to just keep getting worse. And so that's the point where, again, little art, little science, you kind of say to yourself, Eesh, I should really just restart. But here's a tip. Before you restart, the models are actually really good about telling you as the prompter how to help it. You can say, okay, look, it looks like we're off track here. What can I do next time? Or what's wrong with my code base? Or what would be helpful to you to help me prompt you better? And you'd be surprised at how effectively it will be able to go through and say, like, oh, you know what? I had some instructions here that were conflicting with some instructions here. I wasn't quite sure what you wanted me to do, so I did X. It happens all the time. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Wow.
I should do that.
That sounds like a pro tip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I should
The
have
other thing
that like
it'll do,
printed on the back of my wall here.
yeah. It'll also do funny things like, well, I tried to do it, but your code is just so horribly written that I just don't even start. And I'm like, oh,
Oh, it's gonna roast you too.
that
I love
burns,
that.
but maybe you're right. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Zachary is literally asking his agent that right now.
Yeah, it was actually
Um,
surprisingly effective. Uh, Let me do one thing real quick because I think this is important, and we sort of glossed over it, but it is important. Is I did this just for the demo to kind of make this fast, but let me actually walk through how you would go from your own kind of idea or prototype or feature, right? I do this all the time with any new features in the existing code base. This is a general kind of approach. And again, this is open source. Also, I've got a link I'll share in a minute, but this is not gospel. This is not like you have to do exactly these steps. A little bit of, I've been doing this stuff for 2-3 years now. I was writing a AI coding agent for a better part of last year. So I kind of know a little bit about like the things that work and don't work for prompts, but at the same time, play with it. This is what's so fun about this. It's like, you see what other people are doing. You can kind of take best practices here and there. Even this approach here, I'll say, I always steal this idea. This is actually my coworker Jared came up with this idea last December and was like, Kevin, I use Storybook and I did this thing. Isn't this cool? And I was like, yes, that's so cool. And so I love this like back and forth. It's so fun to be discovering. Like there's so much to discover right now. It's a really fun time to be a developer. So, okay.
So tell us what we're seeing here.
Yes. So let me let me do this. Let me try to zoom in. Okay. So this is basically the code for my idea roulette. And this is the code and the prompt that generates this checklist from this overview of the idea. Okay. So we do, let's see here. So there's a couple things we do here. One tip that I like to do for anytime I make a list, especially if it's outside of my code base, if I go to ChatGPT, ChatGPT doesn't know anything about your code base, right? You're starting from scratch. They don't know if you're Python, they don't know if you're Go, they don't know whatever. Okay. You could tell it all that stuff, but one hack is, for any of these AI coding tools, it's really actually quite important to set up one of these kind of rule sets. So some of these are agents.md. So if you Claude Code, this is a little bit of a standard. Cursor has their Cursor rules. All this is just like instructions about how you like to do things, right? Here's how I like to use Pascal case. I like to keep my components here. I'm using Prisma. I'm using Next.js. Blah blah blah. Whatever your code base is, and again, you can stick your code base in AI and ask it to generate, and then kind of tweak. But it's actually getting this right is another pro tip of like. Oftentimes I see people. It's like, the AI keeps throwing my code in different places, and it's like, well, you got to tell it. Like it doesn't know, right? Like you got to say,
Yeah.
okay, I like my stuff here my types, like put them here. Okay. And it does a really good job, but you have to tell it. Okay. So, but
What I see here that's like really interesting to me,
yeah,
Kevin, is you're telling it about the tools. In the past, you know, if you were just thinking about AI from the ground up and kind of installing Cursor, yeah, it can look through a bunch of dependencies, sure,
yep,
but it's also inferring a lot in
yep,
those dependencies too. And only you as a developer know exactly which dependency and which version, which specific way of doing things is right? Like,
yes,
do you want to use Recompose or do you want to use a different like library? Do you want to use Redux or do you want to use Apollo? Like,
yes,
that type of thing. And oftentimes in larger code bases, you might have like three libraries that do the same thing.
right, yeah, yeah, exactly, yep. And so, yeah, I think it's really useful. And this is a living document, right? And this is often, again, if something goes wrong, you ask the AI. Sometimes it'll say, "Hey, you told me to go put my stuff here," and it's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot I had changed that." And then you go and update this, and so this should always kind of be up to date. This is important for you as an AI engineer. But anyway, it's very useful as like a shorthand for like, here's here's my code base. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to tell everything, but just generally, so that your task list comes out with guidance towards your specific code base, as opposed to like just randomly giving tasks, right? So that's all that is at the front here. I just copy and pasted that in there and hard coded it. But here's the actual prompt, okay? And prompts come in two flavors. You've got your system prompt, you've got your user prompt. The system prompt is sort of like the thing that's always there and a little bit more important sort of general guidance for the background, any information you want to feed the LLM. The user prompt is a little more specific of like, hey, go and do X. And then it uses a system prompt information to do it in a certain way, right? But you can kind of mix and match these. There's not a big deal, but just to know that's what this system prompt is. And it follows similar things. And again, a little bit of like magic, a little bit of like, I haven't A/B tested a ton of these, but best practices tend to be like, you sort of give it a role. If you're going to choose a role, like you might as well be the world's best software engineer. Like don't tell it to be the second best or like a junior engineer, right? Like be good. You're also a product manager, right? Here's some high level information. And then here's some very specific rules that I want you to follow. Okay. So in this case, because we're doing Storybook and I like to have Storybook, it's mandatory. Okay. Always have Storybook stories in here. And again, you guys can read through the details, but you can put whatever you want. Just be specific. Okay. And then here's my output that says, this is the format that I want for my checklist. And so very important. Actually, this is probably the most important part of the prompt, which is these two things. So I start with, I want one paragraph describing what you're doing. It's not enough just to have a checklist. Give that agent a little bit more context of the bigger picture of what it's doing so that it kind of knows how to put the pieces together. Okay. And then here's a checklist. And this is the task that it's going to go and do. Okay. Now, I'm using a design system that I tend to like for AI coding, which is this atomic design. If you guys aren't familiar with this, there's like books and stuff on here. Everybody's got different design systems. Let me see if I got, oh yeah, I have it up here. So basically the concept is you want to start with small components. So an atom might be like a text box or, a button. And then you want to start to build these up together and to form different parts of your application. So, you might have a button and a text box, but then the organism might be a little part of a form to submit your name, right? And then you can kind of build that up, and then the page would be like, okay, well, here's a form, and you want name and address and phone number, and then submit button at the bottom. So what's really nice about this approach is that, oftentimes AI, if you went to just like ChatGPT, it'll generate a whole bunch of code that is repeated, or it'll do stuff in like, HTML that's just like a whole bunch of things. By pushing it towards a design system, and again, use whatever you want, but it's really, really good about knowing how to reuse those components and to put them together in a nice sort of production level kind of way, as opposed to just like copying and pasting and putting random, different buttons and texts and styles all over the place. So that's
Evan,
why I'm
do
very
you
specifically calling this out here.
Yeah, real question, quick question. So is this the only reference that you give the agent for atomic design and it somehow knows all of it, or do you
Yeah.
supply like the markdown for atomic design or some
Nope.
other type of like reference to the agent as well?
Yeah, good question. So this one specifically, since it's sort of a well-known theory, I don't have to give any guidance to it. Okay.
Awesome.
But if you have your own design system, and especially if it's like an in-house design system, yes, you do have to give guidance to it. I mean, how else is it going to know, right? So
Yeah.
good way to do that is you can kind of snapshot your code base and send it to an LLM and say, hey, give me some instructions to prompt an AI to create, components using my design system, and it'll give you a first shot at this. Or you can write it from scratch, whatever. I tend to be lazy, so I use AI.
Okay, cool.
So, okay, so basically, blah, blah, blah. Just remember, hey, you're updating an existing code base, so you don't need to have a whole bunch of rules here about installing all these different things. So again, just little things kind of, there's a little bit of trial and error here. And then storybook items, I'm saying like, hey, look, I want the default. I want some edge cases. I want a little accessibility here. You can put whatever you want here. And I'll say this is one really nice thing. And again, Dominic, maybe cover your ears here. For Storybook, I love Storybook. I get a ton of value out of it, but there's a cost to it, right? Which is it takes time to write the stories, just like any tests, right? You're supposed to do it. It's a little bit like eating your broccoli, like, okay, I got to go write my tests and I'm a good boy and all this. What's really nice about AI is you get these stories for free. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get this beautiful, nice storybook interface, and you don't have to spend a day or two, writing out your stories, especially like, again, Dominic, cover yours. I'm not an expert at writing stories. Every time I go back to do it, I have to it's a little bit slow for me to do it. And so this is just such a nice way to get an excellent framework in here without having to, spend about a bunch of time and debugging with my terrible storybook.
I think that like underlines a really important point. You change the value proposition completely because AI is fundamentally writing the stories for you. So you get all the value without any of the work.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I will put this up here if you guys want to screenshot this, or if you want to follow along, just yeah, I probably don't want to manually type that in there, but I do have a just up here that has a bunch of these resources in here. So if you do want to follow along, I just kind of put these together. I also have I have a YouTube video that explains this in more detail and a couple of the next steps. Like I'm not going to show creating the back end here, but that's another very underrated part of this approach is because these storybook stories are embedded with so much context about the data that goes into it and the shape of that data, it's actually really easy now to go from your front end and build out your data access layer. Okay. Incredibly easy. You don't have to give it almost any instruction. You can basically just say, here's my components, here's my page, go build me some endpoints, and it can infer based on your storybook stories what that should look like. And so that's extremely helpful. And so, yeah, but I've got a whole video on that. I've got a couple of videos on design and things like that. Because as you're about to see this, you're going to get kind of a generic design here, right? Which is fine to start, but again, this isn't meant to be the end state. This is meant to be the first thing you do that takes you an hour to get a prototype up and going as opposed to a week. Okay. So you take this to your designer, you take this to your product owners, you take it to your customers. You can do a bunch of design work after the fact. But just know there's a bunch of fun AI techniques and connectors and things to Figma and all sorts of stuff you can do on the design side that we're just going to kind of gloss over today. Okay, so let's see what is going on. So looks like we are still kind of working on this build. It's maybe finding a few little errors. But let's yellow it and just see kind of how far it was able to get. All right, so the moment of truth. And again, 50% of the time this works. But 100% of the time, the ability, like fixing this is like a 2 or 3 minute exercise. So it won't be that hard if it's, even if it's broken. Hey, here we go. Okay, so so I already have in the repo just a button component that's mostly just kind of an example for the AI to kind of follow and say like, okay, here's approximately how this user likes to write storybook stories. Okay. So
So this is like the boilerplate from the repo itself.
exactly. Yep.
All
So
right,
this is
great.
just kind of hanging out there and not really part of my design system. But here's all the stuff that the AI built. And you can see we've broken it down into atoms here. And then here's our organisms, which are basically a combination of these atoms put together. All right. So again, I won't necessarily go through all of these, but you can see here, this is so nice, right? You get all sorts of nice edge cases, long badges, little
Oh wow.
icons, high contrast, your accessibility stuff down here. Again, get this for free. You can play around with this and try different, see how it looks with different things, I think. Yeah. So Storybook is so nice for this sort of thing. And you can just get a
So
sense.
all of this is just set up for you. Like this
Yeah,
is it's
this is
like
all made.
incredible.
This is, here it is doing its own button. Remember, my buttons were pretty basic. I just had a few variants. But it went through and did all sorts of fun stuff like having spinners, loading states disabled. Let's see if this works. Sometimes this works. Yeah. It's probably doing something in the back. Icon only. So this stuff's pretty neat. We got, what's this? Filter chip. Okay, so this is like,
So this is the first time you're seeing this too,
oh yeah, yeah,
right?
this
This
is
is
all new.
generated like
Yeah,
in this call.
yeah, I have no idea. This is good. I'm very happy that it's not a complete disaster. But yeah, I will say I'm kind of teasing. Like honestly, I wouldn't be doing this live demo, and I wouldn't be like only slightly sweating as much as I am if I didn't have a lot of confidence that this would just work. Because I've done this a bunch of times, and almost every time it just works. Right? There's not a lot. Once you get everything set up properly, even though the AI is not deterministic, it doesn't always do what you want. When you get it on the rails and with the modern models, it does a pretty good job most of the time. Okay, so I say that it's going to break here in like 2 seconds, and it's just how these things work. But
Just a quick time check. We have about 15 minutes left.
okay, great. So let me, I'll just show a few of these things real quick. We got this filter bar, but you can kind of see here how we've combined some of these components together. Here's a nice summary bar, so you can kind of see what it looks like here. Again, lots of different states, lots of different information. Let's try something here, which is, I actually have no idea if this, if we're actually able to run this app, but let's see if it actually built a thing. And if it didn't, that's fine. It's Storybook, but just let's just see if we have anything here. I think I got my local host, 3000. And ta-da! Okay, so here we are. Remember, the idea here is you want to put together an invoice and a contract. You can upload these here, drag and drop, or let's just use this. We uploaded some sample data. It's really nice. We get that for free. Oh, look at that. All right. It did
Wow.
it.
Okay.
And so what this thing is, what are we doing here? Oh yeah. Okay. So, again, this is for subcontractors. The idea is like, you've said you're going to do a project and it's going to cost you this much. Here's your actual spend on it. And they want a way to tell like how close were they with that estimate, right? And so it's basically going through here and it said, hey, we said we were going to say $150. It actually cost us 150. We're good. Eesh, we really messed up here. We lost some money here. Blah blah blah. So is this the world's best application? Does it look amazing? Not yet. Is it a heck of a starting point for building this app that somebody in the audience can grab and maybe make 5K and send me a 20 in a year? Probably. I don't know. We'll see. But again, more about the technique than anything. And let me do this real quick, just because I know we're almost out of time. I do want to leave time for questions, but there's a really neat new feature. Dominic mentioned this the other day, which is in Cursor, we have now browser use, which I want to, oh, I know, we're still, let's stop this. It got stuck there. I was trying to do a build and it got stuck. Okay, so we got browser use here. Let's use this. Let me just quickly get this going because it takes a sec. Great. Now open up Storybook and go through each story one by one. Fix any errors or weird things. I don't know. Spelled wrong.
So this like closes the feedback loop.
Yes. And what's really nice about this too is, you know, obviously you go through it as a human, you want to make sure that everything looks good. But when you have these long running tasks, one thing you can do, again, I've got my, whoa, it did something. It did something. Let's see. Is it doing stuff? Let's see if it's clicking.
Does the browser mode like run in like your existing Chrome, or is there a special cursor browser? Oh, okay.
I was gonna say,
There's the answer.
had its own
Yeah.
special browser. That's why I was confused why I was going to that tab. But you can see here a couple of things. First of all, it's a little hard to see. I just move this. You can see what it's doing here. It opened it up. Again, I didn't have to tell it specifically go to 606. It knows that that's the thing. It's clicking through and it's looking component by component. It's taking screenshots. Isn't that cool?
Oh, the screenshot is fantastic.
It's
Nice.
really neat. So you can kind of get a sense of what this looks like. And what's really nice about this, again, is like, if you want this to be a long running task, you can say, hey, go and do all this stuff. And then also just go through and review it. And then it'll kind of do this on its own. And you can, you know, go to lunch, let it run overnight, and you can come back and you have this really nice kind of log of what it looked like, any errors it found, anything it did to correct it. And so, yeah, just a really nice, I mean, again, this is brand new. This just came out like 2 days ago. And so I'm kind of a little wowed by like what it's actually doing and trying to think of like other ways I can use this, but really, really kind of neat addition to this workflow. All right, so that's about it. When this is done, I'll push this up to a repo. I'll add that to my, let's see if I can pull this up again. I'll add this to the gist here. But yeah, okay. Any question? Like what's, yeah, we can do whatever you guys want.
Yeah. For the folks that are listening, drop your questions in chat or in the Q&A. Preferably the Q&A feature in Zoom. I can start. Kevin, is there like price sensitivity to any of this? Because like it doesn't take much squinting to see that it's doing a lot of work, right?
Yes.
You leave for hours and then like that can be an unbounded amount of like tokens that you end up spending. And what's more, you hear a lot about Claude subagents, all the subagents for things. So like you can spin up 4 agents and do the same amount of work. That can be scary to a lot of people, especially like if you're an engineering manager, someone that is like responsible for the engineering budget in your organization, of like giving someone unbounded access to effectively like a fire hose of like of compute. What do you think?
Yes, as a person who managed some interns over the summer and got some surprise bills because they were just like hitting the button a million times with the biggest model, it is absolutely something you need to think about, and it is a real concern. And I'll also say, like, I mean, I had an experience not too long ago. We had someone on one of our teams. They thought they had some free credits. They were running the top Opus 4.1 model, which is like $75 for 1 million tokens. It's incredibly unreasonably expensive. I got a bill for like $3,000 from that.
Oh my.
And
Yeah,
they
that's
were
a lot.
if anyone from Anthropic is here and wants to reimburse me, but no, that's coming out of our budget, and that was like you know, we just had to eat that as a mistake and a learning for going through here. So absolutely, you need to keep an eye on it. That being said, there are ways to keep this to a minimum and to really help with your spend. I'll say, you know, my own usage, I use AI a ton. I would say I'm generally within $300 to $500 a month, which I know sounds like a lot, but if you think about like what we used to do is, you know, we'd hire 1 or 2 subcontractors and they'd work alongside me and I'd assign tasks to them. it's an order of magnitude less money. It's a little bit faster. We still use subcontractors and things for different tasks, but it's not. They can work on extra things. They can do like 2 or 3. We can launch 3 sites at the time that it used to take us 1. And so balancing that cost is really important. A couple tips there, real quick. So if you sign up for like Cursor plans and use it through there, you're going to get a lot. It's going to be cheaper. They're going to subsidize a little bit of that for you. So paying as you go per token is going to be much more expensive than using a plan. The other thing too is the model you choose really matters. So I really kind of lean towards some of the better models, but
Yeah.
specifically GPT-5 is somewhat inexpensive compared to the quality. And so again, I'm using Sonnet here because it's a little bit faster for the demo, but day to day, I use GPT-5 because it's $1 per million tokens versus $75 per million. I mean, it's night and day difference. And even Sonnet, I think, is about $2.50. So almost twice as
Yeah.
expensive, and generally on par. So good tip there. You use GPT-5. Also, Codex, you sign up for the pro plan, you can get it for $200 and let that thing go. That's a really
Right.
good deal too.
Do you see the cost for tokens like trending upwards as your usage kind of like expands and you get more like accustomed to and relying on these workflows?
Yes. And I think it's just kind of worked its way into our engineering budget slowly over time.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things that you kind of have to prove it to the management that it's worth it by accelerating and by getting things out quickly and by even by showing them. I think my team loves it when I do demos and show like, hey, look at this thing I built in a day, and I can prototype this really quickly. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this. And in their minds, like spending an extra $50 to get a prototype up in a day instead of a week
Yeah.
is a no-brainer. Like that's an
Yeah.
absolute yes, please, Kevin. Let me write you a check and keep doing more of that, as long as you're responsible with it. So, but yes, something to think about for sure. There's open source models that are pretty good too, so that's an option if you're on a budget. But it just kind of depends if you're professionally working on it at a company versus doing it on your own. I know that those are very different things. They are for me too.
You
There's a
mentioned
question about the agent
go ahead.
folder.
Yeah.
Do you have like a blog post that people could read about that usage, or is the best thing just that sample repo that you provide?
Sample repo for now, but it's something that's like on my list of that's my next video I want to do is to explain how I use that, because this is a lightweight version of it. Like let's see if I can pull something up that's not going to be too. I think I can use this. This is sort of a project I've been working on that. Here's just an example of like a real project where it's like you can see all of the work that it's done. I've got my epics all laid out here, implementation guides. These are extremely, extremely detailed tasks for a fairly complex app. This is a Rust desktop kind of app with React on the top. And so like, lots of things. I put a bunch of docs and I copy and paste things for like GPT-5 was new. It doesn't know about it. I copied the docs in here and let it reference it instead of having to go to the web and search. A bunch of little tricks here. So yeah, I need to make a video at some point. But once I do, I'll post that in that same repo.
So is that an example of maybe getting a more production ready output than the prototype that you just showed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And that's what I do day to day, right? Like I make the prototypes just to kind of show people, but I would say 90% of my day job is actually like, building something that's pretty secure and can work long term. And really thinking through what are the best practices for more of that production level type of workflow. But it's just harder to show it because honestly, so much of that time is I'll spend 4 hours going through a spec and getting it like spec'd out. That's just not good video, not good webinar, but it's kind of the real reality of like kind of production coding is. And again, the best advice I can give is just shift your time 40% on speccing, 40% on review. Let the agent do that middle coding part.
Right. And something you mentioned earlier was speed as a consideration when using models. And I think that speaks to a much larger consideration of like human in the loop. Like,
Yes.
what does idling look like for you, Kevin? And how do you optimize your time to idle the least, like, aka wait for the agent the least? And does that, like, is that a consideration? Does that matter for you? Like, um,
Oh, 100%. 100%. This is something I talk about all the time within my team and other people. It's just having conversations last night of like, what do you do when your agent's working? Now, one of the things I tend to do is I watch it. I keep an eye on it. You know, we kind of let this one go because it was a little bit, of a contrived example, but it's actually really important for you, even though the agent may be writing good code that passes tests and works. Um, you need to sort of mentally understand your code base, especially as it grows. And when you're writing that code, it comes naturally, right? And so this is much more of a feeling of like you're reviewing a coworker's code or someone who works for you, and trying to understand it that way as opposed to just naturally knowing it based on how you're writing. And one of the best ways to do that is just as that code is being written, constantly checking the diffs, looking at what's coming up here, what's been changed. Cursor has
yeah,
some tools here where you can kind of review what's been done. So that's one thing. I will also say, like, yeah, sometimes I go and get coffee or I like check Hacker News and like there's a little ding that comes on. You probably heard that. That's actually very helpful to get me back on there. So depending on my mood and my laziness level, I will do that. The other trick I've done recently is actually when I create my task list, I say, all right, make the task list for the AI, but what other things do I need to do? Like, and it'll tell me like, oh, we need to get this key. You got to set up an org. You got to set up your database and the staging and the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, actually, this is quite useful to have this like task list of things I have to go and do while the code is being written. And so, yeah, it's kind of a fun little technique. I've just started using that, but little
yep.
bit dystopian of the AI telling, guiding me. But, we're going to kind of gloss over that for now.
Do you have a tip specifically around getting Cursor or other agents to work across the entire code base? It sounds like there's some experience of like asking to example, like replace hard-coded values with design token variables. And like it'll do it partially, but it won't touch a majority of the files.
Yes. A couple things here. One is, and I will say, if I have any of these, one is just telling it, like, before you do any work, I need to add this to my start prompt. Before you do any work, go through the code base. Here's what you're going to do. I want you to find all the files that may be relevant to this, and don't write any code until you have done that. And also, write it up. I want to see your work, right? Like, this is like a homework assignment to a kid. Don't just guess.
Mm.
You tell me in the Scratchpad what you think are the most important files for me to know about, and then read through that and be like, okay, yes or no. And so that's generally a good way. And again, it's all about the context management, getting it in there. But again, these modern tools are pretty good about like crawling your code base, knowing where things work. They'll look and, hey, if it imports this file, I should probably go and look at the parent, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
So let me get this right. You're prompting the agent to scan your code base. The agent is writing something to the scratch pad and then giving you like a human in the loop kind of like review to say, hey, is this what I should be looking at? And then you say yes. So there's like two prompts there. First prompt is like context setting, and the second prompt is like you verifying, hey, you're on the right track, agent.
Yes. Yep. That's one thing you can do with your code base. The other thing that's really helpful, and again, this kind of comes back to this like my repo making choices with tools that are the right choices, but also AI friendly, is I do this thing where is it, a refactor? Okay. I run this command after every single change that happens that I ask the agent to make, at the end of like a run, which is basically saying, look, I want you to make sure this code base is friendly for the next AI agent that comes in, right? They come in fresh, they're not going to have any memory of this. And that means using lots of nested files, using smaller files, okay? Breaking it down. And if you see a file that's gone, I think I have even like, if it's more than 500 lines of code, don't like refactor this. Do this now. Let me review it. Don't wait for, 2 weeks and then you have this huge mess of code you got to refactor. Do that now. The other thing I do is I have this document step, which basically says, okay, use Git, look at any files you've changed, and add a little bit of context at the top of each file to guide the next agent about like what this file is, what changes have been made recently, what you should do. Again, this is a tip from my buddy Jared. He's much smarter than me.
Yeah.
I steal all of his good
Thank you,
ideas.
Jared.
Thank you, Jared. And so this is another good thing that really helps your agent stay on track. So having your code base be AI friendly is like it's sort of underrated. And I know it's hard if you have an existing code base. Like this is, I'm lucky that I get to start new things from scratch with all the best practices all the time. But you can kind of use some of these, and again, some of these are like common sense and like best practices anyway. And so, you can kind of get some of these things for free when, typically you should probably be doing them anyway.
I mean, some of the best practices that you've laid out here are so common that like even I forget about them.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
they're kind of just baked in, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know to mention that to an agent like at
Yeah.
all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do it, but it's certainly not top of mind for me.
Yeah. 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 And I will say
Yeah,
some
the
of the stuff is
refactoring
like,
is like, go ahead.
this adds tokens, this adds more things, and so you kind of have to balance like I will generally do this when it comes time to like, all right, I'm building this production quality thing from scratch. I've got a real budget, and time is more of a constraint than the cost. So slash command, I just load it up with a whole bunch of these things to kind of get the best possible quality of code base. You don't have to do this, and you should always balance off that cost and time and effort.
Yeah. That's something that we're investigating right now with Storybook MCP and like us creating, which is like a very experimental project right now. There's a
Yeah.
repo for it, but the things that we're thinking about are the quality of the output, sure, but also the token usage. Like how economical is it? In our early benchmarks, we're finding that like we can shave like on the order of 45% off your token usage by providing the right context at the right time. And then another early benchmark is we can speed up the actual generation of code by somewhere on the order of like 200%, right? So it's like fewer tokens and a much faster feedback loop that keeps like folks like you in the loop more often. You're not getting coffee, not checking Hacker News, unless you will really want to.
Yeah.
You're really just making sure that the agent is on the right track.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I think, yeah, that takes us at time. So thank you for joining us, everybody. This was a really great discussion. Thank you, Kevin, of course, for your
Yep.
demo and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, I'll get this up later today for you guys.
Yeah, this is a fantastic session, Kevin. So many pro tips that I need to probably watch the session again to take notes. So huge shout out to you.
Thank you. And again, love the tool. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and the chat is like blowing up with just excitement for the stuff that you showed.